My rich CEO dad cut me off after my wedding. My poor husband's new job shocked everyone.
I still remember the day like it was yesterday, the kind of day you expect to be filled with joy and hope, but somehow, it turned into the moment everything started to fall apart. My name is Alec Rose, and this is my story, one I never thought I'd have to tell out loud. I grew up in a family where money wasn't something we worried about. My dad was a CEO, rich puffle, the kind of man everyone respected or feared. At least, that's how it seemed to the outside world. To me, he was just my dad, the man who always said he wanted the best for me. Our home was beautiful, and my life, on paper, looked perfect. Before everything changed, I thought I had it all figured out. I was about to get married to the man I loved, a man who wasn't rich or fancy, but had something far more important. A good heart and a strong spirit. He came from humble beginnings and had struggled with jobs and money more times than I could count. But that didn't matter to me. I believed in him, in us. The wedding day was magical. Everything went just as I had dreamed. Smiles, laughter, promises whispered under the warm glow of lights. My family was there, my friends, and my husband's family too. I thought, this is the start of something beautiful, a new chapter where love would overcome everything. But just days after the wedding, the cracks started to show. My dad, who had always been so involved, suddenly began to pull away. It was subtle at first, missed call here, a cold greeting there, but it grew quickly into silence. Not a single message, no invitations, no family dinners. It felt like I had vanished from their lives overnight. What hurt the most wasn't the silence, it was the reason behind it. My husband had landed a new job, a job that should have been a blessing, a fresh start for us both. But instead of congratulations, all we got were stares and whispers from my family. It was like this job threatened everything they believed in. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, that they needed time, but the truth was worse. One day, I overheard my dad talking to someone, a conversation filled with doubt and disdain. They spoke about my husband like he didn't belong, like our marriage was a mistake. It felt like a knife twisting in my heart. I was caught in the middle, torn between the family I'd known my whole life and the man I loved more than anything. The rejection stung so deeply that some nights I couldn't sleep. I questioned everything, my family, my choices, even myself. How could the people I loved turn their backs so easily? Despite the pain, my husband never gave up. He kept working hard, hoping that one day, his efforts would break through the walls built by pride and prejudice. But those walls seemed stronger every day. Looking back now, I see the signs. I missed the cold looks, the silent judgment. But at the time, I just wanted to believe love would be enough to heal all wounds. I was wrong. Sometimes, love alone isn't enough to change what's been buried too deep. And then, just when I thought we might find a way through, everything changed again. Something happened that shook us to our core. Something so shocking it left us speechless and forced us all to face a truth none of us wanted to admit. What was it? How did it change us? That's where this story really begins. The moment that changed everything came quietly at first, almost like a whisper before a storm. My husband had taken this new job, something unexpected but promising. It wasn't glamorous or high-paying, but it was honest work, a chance for him to prove himself. I thought my family would see that they'd finally accept him, accept us, but I was wrong. When my dad found out about the job, his reaction wasn't just disappointment. It was something colder, sharper. I remember the first time I saw that look in his eyes, the kind of look that doesn't just judge, but cuts you to the bone. It was like my husband's success, his very presence, threatened everything my dad had built. There was a family gathering not long after, the kind where you expect laughter and celebration. Instead, I felt a heavy silence. My dad didn't speak to me or my husband the entire night. When my husband tried to join a conversation, the room seemed to close around him. Whispered comments, sideways glances, the kind of unspoken words that echo louder than anything said aloud. I wanted to step in, to defend him, but the weight of my dad's anger held me back. It was like walking on thin ice. You never knew when it would crack, and when it did, you could fall right through. The tension in the room was so thick you could almost touch it. Later, I overheard a conversation that shattered any hope I had left. My dad was talking with relatives, and their words were cruel and unfair. They called my husband a charity case, said he was beneath our family, and that our marriage was a mistake. It felt like they were trying to erase him, erase me, from our family history. That night, I cried more than I had in years, not just for the pain, but for the realization that love wasn't enough to protect us from prejudice, from the invisible barriers built by money and status. I felt like I was losing both my family and the man I loved, trapped in a battle I never wanted to fight. My husband, despite everything, never showed bitterness. Instead, he worked harder, stayed quieter, and refused to let the rejection define him. But I could see the toll it took: the late nights, the moments he stared out the window, lost in thought. I wished I could carry some of that burden for him. The days blurred into weeks. Family invitations stopped coming altogether. Messages went unanswered. The warmth I once felt in my home turned into cold walls. My dad's silence was louder than any argument we could have had. I kept asking myself, why is this happening? Why is my family treating us this way? I tried to hold on to hope. Maybe, I thought, if my husband proved himself enough, my dad would come around. But deep down, I feared the truth was harsher. This wasn't just about a job or money. It was about pride and prejudice, about the kind of walls people build around themselves to protect what they think is right, even if it means hurting the ones they love. And then one night, everything came to a head. My dad called me, not with kindness, but with anger that I wasn't prepared for. The words he used were sharp and cutting, accusing my husband of disrespect and me of betrayal. It was the worst confrontation of my life. I wanted to fight back. I wanted to defend the man who stood by me through it all. But the pain was so deep, and the silence between us felt like a chasm too wide to cross. I realized then that this fight was bigger than just us. It was about the values and fears my family clung to. On that moment, I had to decide, would I let this destroy us, or would I find a way to stand strong, even if it meant standing alone? That night, after my dad's harsh words, I felt like I was drowning. I didn't know how to hold myself together when the people I loved the most seemed ready to tear me apart. My husband sat beside me, quiet but steady, and I realized that he was carrying his own kind of pain. He never showed, but I felt in every glance, every tired sigh. For days, I was caught in this impossible place. On one side was the family I'd grown up with, people who had shaped me, who I wanted to believe would stand by me no matter what. On the other side was my husband, the man who loved me for who I was, who fought every day to build a future for us both. Even when the world pushed back, the rejection felt like a cold shadow hanging over everything we tried to build. Invitations stopped coming. Messages went ignored. It was like we were ghosts, invisible to the people who should have been our biggest supporters. I wanted to scream at my dad, to demand answers, but I was afraid of what that might cost me. My husband found a way to hold himself together though. He threw himself into his work like it was the only thing keeping him afloat. Late nights, early mornings, long hours, he never complained, even when I saw the exhaustion weigh on his face. But I knew the real fight was not just in the office. It was at every family event we missed, every cold look we endured. One day, after another painful silence at a family gathering, I realized that this wasn't just about us anymore. It was about a much bigger problem, something I hadn't fully understood before. It was about the invisible barriers built around people because of where they come from, how much money they have, or the color of their skin. It was about judgment, unfairness, and pain that goes deeper than words. I remembered the nights we spent talking about our dreams, about a future where love could break through all the walls and barriers, but reality was harsh, and sometimes, love alone couldn't fix everything. The pain and rejection weren't just personal, they were part of a larger story, one so many people live every day without anyone noticing. Despite all of this, I started to see something else, something powerful. My husband's strength wasn't just about getting through his job. It was about refusing to let prejudice and hate define him. It was about standing tall even when everyone else tried to push him down. We began to lean on each other more, learning to survive in a world that didn't always want us to win. We found little moments of peace, quiet dinners, late night talks, and the kind of love that grows stronger in the hardest times. But the hardest moment was still ahead. The moment when everything we'd been holding inside would have to come out. The moment that would decide if we could survive this storm, or if it would finally tear us apart. I didn't know it then, but that moment was closer than I thought. The moment I dreaded finally came one evening that felt like any other, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. My husband had been working harder than ever, trying to prove himself not just to my family, but to the world around us. I thought maybe, just maybe, things would start to change. But that night shattered every hope I had left. My dad called again. but this time his voice wasn't just cold, it was filled with fury. The words cut deeper than before, sharper and more unforgiving. He accused my husband of disrespect, of dragging our family name through the mud. He said things I never imagined hearing from my own father. Words that made my heart break and rage burn at the same time. I tried to stay calm, to explain, to tell him that my husband was trying his best, that we were building a life together. But my words were like water off a stone. My dad's anger wasn't just about the job anymore, it was about control, pride, and something darker that I couldn't yet name. After that call, the silence in our home grew heavier. My husband and I tried to hold on, but the weight of rejection and judgment was suffocating. I saw the way my husband's shoulders slumped, how exhaustion lined his face deeper every day. Yet, he never stopped fighting, not for my dad's approval, but for our future. Then came the night that changed everything. A family gathering I wasn't sure I could face, but I went anyway, hoping to bridge the growing gap. As soon as we walked in, the air shifted. My dad's eyes didn't meet mine. Instead, they landed coldly on my husband. The room was filled with whispered conversations, judging looks, and the kind of silence that screams. I felt the sting of every glance, every whispered word. My husband stood tall, but I could see the hurt beneath his calm. It was the kind of hurt that no one should have to bear, especially not from family. Then, in front of everyone, my dad spoke harsh, unforgiving, and final. He told us we were no longer welcome, that our marriage was a mistake that brought shame to the family. The words hit like a hammer. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg, but I was paralyzed. The room felt like it was closing in on me. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about family, love, and loyalty shattered. My husband looked at me with eyes full of pain and determination. It was clear. This wasn't just about rejection. It was a test of everything we believed in. We left that night with more than just broken hearts. We left knowing that the road ahead would be harder than ever, but also that we had something no one could take away each other. That night, I understood the true meaning of strength, not the kind that comes from money or power, but the kind that comes from standing up for what's right, even when the world turns against you. What happens next isn't just our story. It's the story of so many who face invisible battles every day, fighting for respect, for love, for justice, and it all comes down to one question. How far are we willing to go to hold on to what truly matters? I still remember that evening as though it were carved into my memory, the one I had feared for months. A day I thought would bring reconciliation instead became the moment everything broke apart. Since our wedding, silence had grown between me and my father, an invisible wall thicker than steel. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unanswered. Every family gathering became a battlefield of sideways glances and whispered conversations. My husband and I were no longer part of that world. We had become outsiders in the family I once called home. It wasn't just the absence of words that hurt. It was the reason behind them. My husband had taken a job that, in his eyes, was a step toward building our future. To my family, it became a symbol of defiance, a threat to everything they valued. They saw not hard work and sincerity, but a challenge to their pride, their image. And my father, he reacted with something colder than disappointment, something I couldn't name then, but I now know was disdain. That night was meant to be another family gathering. I told myself it would be different. I held on to hope that my father's silence might break, but the moment we stepped through the door, the atmosphere shifted. The warmth was gone. His eyes didn't meet mine. Instead, they rested with judgment on my husband, who stood quietly, as if anticipating what was coming. The whispers grew louder as the evening wore on, and I felt the tension like a heavy blanket pressing down on my chest. When my father finally spoke, it wasn't in whispers. His voice was cold, sharp, and final. You are no longer welcome here. This marriage was a mistake. You bring shame to this family. The words hit me harder than I could have imagined. My knees felt weak, my heart pounding with a mixture of grief and fury. I wanted to speak, to defend my husband, to demand an explanation, but no sound came. The air was heavy with silence, not the quiet of peace, but the silence of an ending. We left that night without a word, not out of surrender, but because there was nothing left to say. The walls between us had crumbled, but so had the world I once believed in. What remained was the man beside me, steadfast, wounded, but unwilling to give in. That night, lying awake beside him, I realized something important. This fight was no longer about acceptance. It was about survival. Survival of love, dignity, and the courage to stand together in the face of rejection. We didn't have the luxury of backing down. And so, in that silence, I made my choice. I would stand with him, even if it meant standing alone, because I had learned the hardest truth of all. Some battles are worth losing everything for, especially the ones that define who you are. After that night, our home became a silent battlefield. My heart ached, but with it came a decision. There was only one path for me, to protect my love, even if it meant losing everything else. Days passed, but neither my family spoke to us, nor did any old bonds return. My father's anger grew deeper, and his words weighed heavier on my soul. Yet my husband's courage never faded. Every morning he woke up and threw himself into his work, fighting for his dreams. His determination gave me strength. One day I asked myself, could I sacrifice my love for my family? Could I betray my own heart? The answer was clear. No. We made a choice. We would live life our own way, without waiting for anyone's approval. We rented a small home and built our dreams together. Life was simple, but it was ours. Then one day, my family reached out to us. My father, with a softer look in his eyes, said, perhaps I was too late to understand you both, but now I see your choice is yours to make. Those words felt like a small victory, not just for me, but for both of us, a new beginning. We realized that in life, the greatest courage is listening to your heart, even when the world is against you. Love is not just a feeling, it is a choice, and it is at its most beautiful when you fight for it yourself. And we chose to fight, together, in our own way.